I see you, man. Are you there?
Yes.
Wow, that took a long time.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's first time for everybody. Well, good. Glad we can get this straightened out. Didn't want to waste your time.
No worries. How you been?
Good. How you been, man?
Been well. Just enjoying.
How's the gym?
It's good. Staying consistent. I got a lot of family time now, so I'm with the daughter during the day, and I just kind of
Yeah,
work around my wife's schedule. So I'm in early morning, and then go back in the evening when she comes home. So
that's good. That's
yeah.
good. All right. Well, Cap said he wasn't enjoying in, but I don't. I don't see him. Let's see. Where's this dude? So we'll go ahead and get started and see if he jumps in later. He'll probably have the same questions you did. So now we know how to fix it, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So, so the main reason I started or wanted to do this was we all have uh, um, know a lot of things or done a lot of things in the gym, and we know what's worked for us and what hasn't worked for us, and we all have um, we all want to help a lot of people in whatever capacity that is, and but people don't know where to find us, and so if we use stuff like this to get out to as many people as we can, um, it'll get a lot more people to us so we can help them, and it'll be a good thing for everybody.
Absolutely.
The topic that I chose today, and it can change once we get going, uh, if it leads us down some other path, was so we all are familiar with the widely accepted training principles: intensity, frequency, and volume. Intensity is how close to your one rep max you are in your lift or average over your lifts. Frequency is how often you train. We will say a lift or a body part, and volume is your weight times rep times sets. And then if you want to take it a step further, your total volume is all three of those things put together. So we can go in as in like our opinion, which I guess it depends on what your goal. We can throw that caveat in there. Which, in your opinion, is the most important variable? And we can start there, and we can see where we go from there.
For me, I think it really depends on the. Are we talking like power lifters specifically, or lifters in general, or
Well, there you
fitness
go.
plans?
There's our first turn, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we had Cap on here, he would say from a Olympic weightlifting perspective, and they're more of a frequency intensity
Definitely.
group. And then I invited another guy. He couldn't make it. Chris Sullivan works out at the gym. He's competed in a few bodybuilding shows, and so he would say he would be like a volume guy, right? Because he's a bodybuilder.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I
I
think
guess we would talk to from what we know, right? So, in
yeah.
your opinion,
For powerlift, I think a lot of it depends on the lifter. Some might respond better to a higher frequency. Some might, depending on their lifestyle. And, a lot of people will talk about the size of the lifter or if it's a male or female and how strong they are, how long it takes for them to recover. So I think, like actually a mentor of mine, Coach Tom DeLong, he always says it depends. It depends. So it's kind of situational. I think they all have their place. It just really depends on the lifter in my eyes.
so if you're assessing a new lifter, you have a new trainee that goes in. Uh, do you have like a skeleton program that you run in the beginning to assess their fitness and skill level, and then do you make changes, or do you go in with a completely blank slate and we have to do some sort of assessment, I assume, but you go a completely blank set slate and see what they respond to?
Yeah, I think initially, someone just starting out, they'll make progress off pretty low volume, even low frequency. Does it mean it's optimal for this person? Maybe not, but they can still make progress. And then you can always increase frequency, increase volume over time to continue progress if they stall out.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned the recovery thing, and I think, unless I don't have my variables tuned in right, I have a recovery issue. So a lot of volume. So I have to, take it pretty easy on all three of them so that I can recover and be ready for the next session. I mean, I don't work out at an optimal time. I mean, I either go, super early in the morning, or after everyone's put to bed at night, like at 9 o'clock at night in the gym. And not to say that people have it. I mean, that's not a well, it's not like an excuse. It's an excuse. I mean, that's just the way I got to do it, and I got to be careful um, on how much I push it. And I've had issues where I push the variables a little too much, and I stall out, and I go backwards. Um, so, would you think that um, uh, using one of them at a time to push would be a good way to um, slowly make progress, or do all three have to be manipulated at the same time? I mean, or this could be another depends question.
Yeah, I think you could probably do one thing at a time, and then that way you really know if it's working for you or not. Versus if you did, all components and just went super high frequency, high volume,
Hmm.
um, and that may break you down more. Might be tougher to recover if you're doing high frequency and high volume
Yeah,
versus if you just increase one of them.
no, definitely.
Yeah,
I uh, go overboard at times and try and do everything all at once, and I mean, you end up getting sick, or you feel like crap, or you get hurt, and then you're not making steps in the right direction. You're going backwards. So
yeah,
in your training, I mean, you know yourself pretty well. I mean, you're the best experiment that you have, right?
for
Um,
sure.
uh, what are the three parameters you focus on?
I started out doing um, I guess a lower volume, lower frequency, and I made progress. And then over time, I went to the other extreme and tried a higher frequency, squatting 3 or 4 times a week, benching 4 times a week, deadlifting 2 times. So versus what I started with was more like one squat, one deadlift, two benches. And I made progress with the high frequency as well. And since then, I've actually come back around and found something kind of in the middle that I think allows for me enough time to recover and to keep making progress. Obviously, we know the longer you lift, the slower the progress. You get kind of peaks and valleys. Um, but so I've come somewhere in the middle where for me, I tend to do like squat twice a week, bench 3 times, sometimes four, and then deadlift once a week now. And I feel that works pretty well for me.
So you have to keep. So you obviously keep some sort of training journal so that you can keep track of
Yeah,
what all you're doing and what it's doing to you in terms of recovery, right?
yeah, absolutely. I track. I actually write out all my uh, weekly training. I do it in advance, and then I use percent based training, but I also use a little bit of, I guess you call it auto regulation,
Yeah.
where I'll use the numbers as guidelines and then make adjustments based off how I feel that training session. So it's nothing set in stone. Obviously some days we feel stronger than others, and I'll just kind of listen to the body. But I like having those numbers there to kind of give me something to shoot for and give me a feel for where I'm at versus only doing like an RPE model where maybe, um, I won't be able to hit what I would like to hit numbers wise if I'm just, going by feel for everything. So I don't know. I like to kind of use
Right.
both like a percent base and kind of a go by feel approach.
So, but you have your skeleton. when you walk into the gym, your ideal workout. Um, and you may do less depending on how you feel. Do you give yourself the ability to do more than you have written down, or do you try and hold yourself back and save yourself for? I mean,
Yeah,
powerlifter, you're training for a meet, right? So
yeah, that's a great question. And I was actually just listening to a podcast that talked about that. And a lot of times for me, it goes both ways, where if I'm feeling really good, I might go a little heavier. But a lot of times we all want to kind of get carried away, and we get that ego lifting going where we're like, oh man, I got to go for a PR. But maybe that's not always the best thing to do long term, because, you know, it might have a little accumulative effect for the next few training sessions. And, you know, when it goes up, something else might have to drop. So
right.
try to be smart about it. But obviously, sometimes we can get carried away if things are feeling really good. But um, Coach Kevin Fisher was a strength coach of mine, actually, back in college football at Santa Barbara City College, and he always said, "Leave one in the tank." And he was still is a power lifter, and um, you know, he runs some meets at his gym over there. And anyways, I always kind of use that as um, some good advice. Is and we know RPE now, like an RPE 9 would be probably leaving one in the tank.
Mm.
But I've always kind of utilized that because back in high school, I always thought more is better. So I would just kind of push the intensity all the time. And my last set of squats, I remember, you know, this was back in the day. I didn't know a whole lot about training, and I would push it to failure. So I'd set the pins just below my depth, and I would just go, go, go. And who knows if it was true failure or not. But now, obviously, we know that's not the best way to train. So I like to leave a little in the tank, and I will push it a little higher than my prescribed numbers if I'm feeling good. But I always, and I tell lifters this that I program for is, you know, we don't always need to hit a PR just because it's heavy singles day. So yeah, it's obviously best to save it for the platform. And yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah, you got to be covered for the next. I mean, I would say, everyone goes through that. They want to make progress every workout, and they think that progress is only a PR, and like, you lift heavier than last time. Um, but I mean, PRs, you can say, in when you do, even when you're doing your accessory work. I mean, if you want to focus on PRs in your accessory work, I think that would be better for recovery than going for PRs in your heavier sets. So everyone, I mean, you've said it, and I think I've heard you say it in the gym. Messing around. We're lifting for the gram, right? We're lifting for
hmm.
Instagram, and we want to show that we're making progress. But there are other ways besides the exercises that are the most taxing to make progress and PR in, and will be more beneficial to you in the long run than just lifting heavy and going to failure. Because I mean, like you said, ego lifting makes you, if you make it, ego lifting makes you feel better than doing a couple of more glute ham raises, right?
Yeah, yeah, I guess a little temporary sacrifice for long-term benefit, right?
Yeah. All right. So when you train your trainees, um, and you're tailoring your programs to fit their needs, um, do you follow the same sort of training guidelines for them, as far as you have a training philosophy, right? Whether you want to call it, I mean, you call it whatever you call it, but if you want to say like you know, I'm a 5x5 guy, and everyone that I train is going to do 5x5, but I'm going to tailor their percentages and their assistance work based on what they need, or do you completely analyze the lifter and see exactly what kind of program they will benefit from?
Yeah, definitely try to create an individual effect where you know, assess the lifter and um, the numbers, sets, reps, schemes, they might be similar from one lifter to another depending on, you know, the phase of training they're in. If they're a lot of the lifters I program for will be doing the meet at our gym, so it makes the programming a little bit easier when they're for periodization, plan workouts over time. They can be in the same phases. The actual days they train might vary, the frequency might vary, and obviously the weights are going to vary. And then some lifters, depending on their competition lifts, will make adjustments. So some pull sumo, some pull conventional, high bar versus low bar. So I just make a lot of adjustments there, and there are similarities, but there's also a lot of individual differences there. And then if I have some lifters obviously competing at different times of the year, they'll be in a different phase. So
Yeah. So a beginner starting out, if they go on Team Nation or bodybuilding.com and they pick out a cookie cutter program to start out, they shouldn't be married to that program for a long period of time. Or, I mean, I guess they wouldn't have enough experience to know whether or not something is working for them, or they should stick with something, because in the beginning, for beginners, anything pretty much works. So how married should you be to your program in the beginning until you know it works or not? Do you have a feel for that, or is that something that um, you only gain with experience?
I think if you're seeing progress, you can continue to stay on the same program. I was on 531 for probably a couple of years, and then I started making some adjustments. Before 531, I got a Josh Bryant's what was it, power building ebook, and I got a lot of workouts and some program design from there.
Mm.
So those kind of gave me kind of a good baseline and a feel for just, I guess, being introduced to powerlifting. But I feel like for beginners, they can stay probably on a linear split for a long time and make progress. And then over time, maybe they have to get a little more creative and find what works for them, find their strengths and weaknesses and attack those. And I think it's important to look at training and competitions and create different season or different phases. So have an off season, have a strength phase,
Mm.
have a peaking phase, and a lot of the cookie cutter approaches may or may not have that. But
Right.
I think you could still benefit on probably a basic program when you're first starting out and make really good progress. So
So you think linear in the beginning and then block once you consider yourself not a beginner?
um, it really depends on the person. Look at Ed Cohen. He made progress for years and years on a linear approach. And I think from what I heard on a podcast recently, he talked about his training and how he would set it up for the numbers he wanted to hit at a meet, and he would just work backwards from there and have everything laid out over a long period of time and just run cycle after cycle, meet after meet, and just kept making progress. For me, I kind of do more of an undulated approach. So
Uh,
I think most programs are probably linear because, you're starting off higher reps, lower weight, typically high
mm.
hypertrophy phase, high volume phase. And then as you get closer to the competition, you're going to go typically lower reps, higher weights. So it's kind of linear, but I'll throw in some undulations where, you got some different volumes and intensities throughout, even weekly, or the frequency, I should say, of heavy lifts. I try to increase as I get closer to a peak phase, and then taper right before. So there's a lot of different ways to do that and to peak a lifter. Again, it might depend on the lifter, what they respond best to, and sometimes there's a lot of trial and error. I feel where you kind of have to get to know who you're coaching and what they respond best to.
Right. I think a lot of people lose, or I got into a discussion. I think it was with Terry, as a matter of fact. Somebody mentioned something about volume, and I try to explain or get my point across that, it doesn't matter what program you follow. Yeah, I had mentioned that, increasing your volume, in my opinion, was the most important training parameter to make progress, right? I made that statement.
Hmm.
Um, he didn't agree for some reason. But your total volume to bench, at a meet, 275 is going to be less for your next cycle than your total volume you need to bench 15, right? So
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
not to kill yourself intensity wise every. I mean, you can do 5x5 and your 5x5 is set up to bench 275, but you can still do in the next cycle 5x5 the same number of reps and sets, but your weight, your total volume has to increase so you can bench 315, right? So
Progressive overload, right?
right, regardless of what you're doing, undulating or linear or block, right? If you look at the big picture, your big macro cycle volume is going to be, even if it's slightly, in order to make progress, has to be larger than or higher than your previous macro cycle total volume. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you're still. I mean, even if it's not this week, I'm doing 225. Next week, I'm doing 230. Just that slight tick in the next macro cycle, your volume has to go up for you to bench 215 if you bench 275 the last meet, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good. I would definitely agree with that. I feel, when I look at the volume and intensity and frequency, I actually did use one of those programs. They had a free trial where you can kind of monitor your total volume weekly, and a little breakdown your average intensity and all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was looking at my training just over the years, starting off a little less volume, lower frequency, and then over time, I increased my volume because I noticed my squat day became a little squat marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to a higher frequency squatting approach, each squat session was lower. I had a lower volume, but my weekly volume was greater. And so, I think I made some more progress because of that. But coming back around to somewhere in between, I felt gave, like, obviously we're getting older, my joints more time to recover. So that one day a week of like a kind of a squat marathon, I felt my knee a little bit more. Body was talking to me a little bit more. So when I decreased the daily volume and increased my frequency, though, seemed to be a little easier on the body for me. And then coming back around, so instead of maybe squatting 3 or 4 days to maybe 2 days, kind of like that happy medium for me, I think, where I can get a pretty good amount of volume per session,
Mm-hmm.
not overdoing it, and give myself enough recovery, but my weekly volume is probably more, in like a better range for me.
Yeah. And how important do you think, like, we mentioned recovery, and recovery means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I mean, just days out of the gym isn't necessarily recovery. If you're playing basketball and doing a bunch of other stuff, stuff outside of the gym. Do you think people not don't focus enough on like their sleep and nutrition as they should to make progress?
Yeah, I definitely think most people can, myself included, benefit from more sleep and just really focusing on, enough recovery between sessions. And, we try to create training splits that allow for recovery, but obviously if we're not getting enough sleep, that's a whole nother issue. The same goes to nutrition. So there's definitely a lot of variables outside of the gym that can benefit us all.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Um, so, is there any place that people can find you, or you have a website or a Facebook they can check you out on?
Yeah, just Team Breakthrough. Through is THRU, teambreakthrough.com. It's my website. Instagram, Facebook, just my name, Steve Melero, Melero. So,
Great.
hey, I appreciate you reaching out to me and setting this up, and I'd like to do this whenever you do
No,
it or
yeah,
whenever it fits our schedules.
yeah. I'll make a group. I mean, and I'll add people to the group as far as who who's interested in participating. And like I said, some of the guys, you can't make it every weekend, and that's understandable. And maybe we can maybe Saturday night 8 o'clock isn't the best time for everybody. Maybe it's during the week at lunchtime or whatever. But I'll set up a group and we can see who can attend when. And yeah, I like to keep these going because it's 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 better than going to. I mean, not that websites like T Nation are a bad thing, but I mean they they may be a little biased as far as wanting people to click on their articles and making their philosophies a little more exciting, so people will be interested. It's better to hear from people that have done it and have experience in some way. And just talking to we're ate up by this. We like talking about this, and if you get together with a bunch of other bros and to talk about what you like, so set up something up, and we can get a schedule going, and we can all do topics, and we'll see how big we can get this, or where it goes. Uh, when's your next meet?
To be determined. I just came off the Anaheim Fit
Yeah,
Expo, and
yeah.
I was looking at maybe December. I know there's the
Hmm.
one in Ventura, and then there was another
Yeah,
one, drug tested one, kind of near Anaheim, Long Beach area. But December is a crazy month for us, and I don't think that's going to work. So I actually
mm,
reached out to Coach Fisher, who I mentioned earlier, about if
yeah.
they're going to see if they're going to be hosting one at his new gym in Santa Barbara, and he said maybe in February he might shoot for. So if that's the case, that might
Okay.
be a nice local one. I try to just focus lately as our powerlifting team has been growing at our gym. I just try to focus on coaching,
Right.
especially while we have first time competitors and all that. So eventually, I'll probably be able to do our meets at our gym, but for the time being, just coaching on those and then trying to find a couple two or three meets a year
Mm.
I can do on my own.
Yeah, I was looking at the one just because it's local, the one in Ventura, and then there was California State in Whittier in March.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe. But if Santa Barbara is happening around that time, that's a little closer than going to Whittier. So,
absolutely. That'll be a
and
fun one.
a nicer drive.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the calendar and hopefully keep in touch with Coach Fisher and see if that's going to take place or not, because they haven't had one there in a couple years or so.
Yeah, they've been moving, you said, or something, right?
They moved locations. I still haven't seen it yet. I'd like to make it out there and check it out, and then hopefully they can get some
Yeah,
meets going on over there again.
right. All right, man. Well, it's good talking to you.
You too. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, no problem. I'll send something out. We can get this going.
All right,
Thanks a
brother. You,
lot.
you take care.
All right, later, man.